Well, you know, when you come, I'm originally from Baltimore, Maryland. My great grandfather came from Evansville, Indiana. That's our connection to Walloon Lake was through Evansville, and he came up here in the right around the turn of the century. Rented a cottage down the shore here. It was called the Ice House. The family that owned it, its last name is Ice, and it was a two-bedroom, very basic, modest little country shack. And so over the years, the family evolved out to Baltimore, and we would leave Baltimore, and it was a good day trip. It was in the family wagon, and a trip that now takes about 12 hours. Back then took about 20 hours. And we would arrive, and you were transformed into the wilderness. Even in 1960, it was still pretty rustic. And you know, we had a sense that there was you know, bears and mountain lions and everything in the woods around us, and my father had a lot of fun playing with us, you know, making us believe that that was true. Kept us close to the house. But you know, when you come from an area like Baltimore, Maryland, and you have the bay, and you have the ocean, and you have some beautiful landscape, when you arrive in northern Michigan, the thing that you're first struck with is that it's blue water. And I think that the blue water and the green hills are what leave the lasting impression on us when we would leave. And I got to a point in my life where I was, you develop this sense, and I know everyone on this lake who leaves to go home, who's a resorter here, when they leave this lake, they have a sense that of kind of disappointment, of something great's come to an end and they have to leave. And that always bothered me. So I moved here 20 years ago, and I wanted to live here. I didn't want to say goodbye to it. I wanted to be around it all the time. And so I did that. We moved here, my wife and I moved here. And we get to spend time on this lake as much as possible. And now we're in efforts to help, you know, preserve it and take care of it and preserve it for the next generation. My grandmother had a respiratory ailment. My great-grandmother, I should say, had a respiratory ailment, and the railroad promoted the clean air. And so she took the train along with my great-grandfather, and they came up here, and lo and behold, it's out of that hot, steamy, humid Midwest summer, before there was air conditioning, this is how people got away from the heat. And that air is what brought them here. And then, you know, you sit here and you feel it on a morning like today in August, where it seems like it's about 52 degrees. But the air is crisp, it's clean, it's fresh, and it had health benefits. So then you look at the clean water, and you look at the pristine surroundings, the hills, and you can understand why they wanted to stay. When you're leaving 105-degree Midwest summer heat, and you get here and it's 72 degrees and crystal clear and sunny, again, it's not hard for the railroad to promote something like this. I have a book that my father gave me. It was written in 1911 by the Walloon Lake Association, which is the oldest lake association in the country. And it's an organization that basically oversees the lake and tries to protect it and preserve it as best it can. But this book, written in 1911, talks about the promotion of Walloon Lake as being very easy to do, very genuine. This is 1911, that while other lakes in the area might have needed to stretch the truth a little bit about how wonderful they were, Walloon didn't have to do that. It kind of sold itself. I think word spread quickly of how great Walloon Lake was, and I think it was Ernest Hemingway who, right around the time he got married, felt that Walloon Lake was too crowded. And so in the 1920s, Ernest Hemingway thought it was too crowded. I know my father thought in 2010 it was too crowded. So it's all relative, but people talk about this lake and have an affinity for this lake as though they were back in 1910 and seen it for the first time. The day-to-day routine of my great-grandparents was one of a lot of free time, and I am so envious of that. I think back to what a day must have been like. You know, the things that we take for granted, the indoor plumbing, the things that we take for granted today. You know, ice, electricity. I know that next door is the cottage that my great-grandfather built, and he and a friend of his, Wally, So my great-grandfather was Wally Cleveland, my namesake, and Wally Dyer, both doctors from Evansville, Indiana, came up, built their cottages, and they're on a hill. And they were the only two cottages at the time that had electricity. There were only two cottages in the area at the time that had indoor plumbing. And there was a hydraulic ram that was about a football field away that ran day and night to pump water to the houses. And the ram made a sound. It was a kind of a clinking, ka-chunk sound all day, all night. And I have friends that live down the hill from there that said they remember hearing it. And you know, a kerosene heater, unheard of, to heat the water for my great-grandmother to have a hot bath. You know, most people, including me, when I came here in the early 1960s, we bathed in the lake. We kept a bar of Ivory soap on the dock, and that's how we took our baths. The matriarch of the family had heated water. So you know, talk about how the day is impacted. You know, bathing suits. You know, today you slip on a pair of bathing suits, you run down the lake, you jump in. It was almost like getting dressed for a party to go swimming in the day. Food. You know, where you got your food, what you ate. The scarcity of things back then, I think, slowed everything down, and the world was smaller. Your neighbors were more important to you. You were maybe a little more social back then. Again, a lot of free time to ponder what you were going to do, to read, to just relax. No phones. I know when I grew up, we had a party line at the house, and 5 other families shared that line, and you had to wait to use it, or you had to listen for your specific ring to know that it was for you to answer. And that was always a big deal, because I always wanted to answer the phone, because that was something special up here. No TVs, no computers. Now I'm sounding like my father. But it's all evolved so quickly within the last few years of smartphones and iPads, and I think that's really changed the dynamic, because people come here and they work from here. There was a time when it was just completely rest and relaxation. There was no connection to the outside world. Now everybody's connected. Everybody's engaged in what's going on daily. If I want to know what the stock market's doing today, or later this morning, or later this afternoon, I have instant access to it. That brings a lot of things along with it. So I think the ability to genuinely enjoy this lake is something that is hard to do these days. Well, you had one family in particular would be the Wilson family. C.E. Wilson was head of General Motors during World War II. A significant position in this country's history. But when he came to Walloon Lake, he was just Mr. Wilson. And he was able to fish and relax, and he was just kind of one of the regular guys. I think that that's typical of many people who, even today, it's not unusual to go to the Village General Store and run into a CEO of a major company, and he's in his bathing suit and a t-shirt, and he's very receptive, or to meet some popular celebrity even. Everybody does kind of become a regular Joe around here. Ernest was just one of the regular guys, and as he grew in popularity, of course, northern Michigan and Walloon Lake became a little bit more center of the Hemingway universe. But to the Hemingway family, it was always just a place to escape from Chicago's heat. I think the one thing that I remember Ernie Mainland saying was that the Hemingways were just a regular family. And when you look at those pictures of the Hemingway family, and there's many of them, I think that it's very easy for today's families to picture themselves as just that regular family as well. And, you know, Walloon Lake gives you a place to be a regular family. I talked about the grounding force of the family. Well, it's fine for holidays, but it's also in the summertime. The extended family can't wait to be here. There's always a great pillow that's on many people's sofas around the lake that says you never know how many friends you have until you have a cottage on Walloon Lake. And I think that that's very true.